for a live simulcast of the Larry Elder program. Now the release of results from a crackdown on fraudulent credit repair services. For the next 40 minutes, you'll hear from Federal Trade Commission officials, victims of fraudulent credit repair services, and attorneys general.
Okay, y'all ready? Is everybody ready? Not quite? Ready now? My name is Victoria Streitfeld from the FTC press office. We're right across the hall if anyone needs any help after the press conference. I would just like to run through what we're going to do this morning and then turn it over to our speakers. Our first speaker will be Jody Bernstein, who is the director of the Bureau of Consumer Protection here at the FTC. We will then go to Attorney General of Tennessee, Charles Burson, who is seated to my left. Then Nicholas Canestraro, who is the Senior Vice President of Marketing for the Newspaper Association of America, will speak. And we will then turn to Catherine Rose, who will tell her story. Catherine is from Charlotte, North Carolina. All of the speakers will make short statements, and we want to wait until after their statements for questions. Their names are in Jody's statement, which should be included in your press packet. I just want to remind all of you that this is a press conference, and we would like to take questions just from the media. So if someone is here who needs to talk to us who is not from the media, please talk to the staff at the back of the room after the press conference. And you can identify yourself, and we'll be happy to help you. Jody?
Thank you very much, Vicki. Good morning. I know you've all heard about the advertisements for credit repair. They say things like, tired of being turned down for credit, tired for not being able to get a credit card. Well, we can fix that for you. We can restore and reestablish your credit. The truth is that nothing but time can clean up negative but accurate information from consumers' credit records. Yet those ads are everywhere, and they represent an old but growing problem, credit repair scams. Or maybe we ought to just call it credit repair, because anyone who promises that they can do what they promise is wrong. Your credit repair continues to be a major fraud in today's world. In order to put these scam artists out of business and educate consumers about their rights, the FTC and the state attorneys general today announced Operation Payback, a federal state cooperative enforcement effort that uses modern tools to fight these illegal operations. In conducting our investigations that led to these cases today, and there are 4 of them, we heard many stories about con artists. They prey on consumers who've already suffered a sudden loss of income and for some reason got behind in their bills. You will hear, as Vicki said, from one of those consumers today. Catherine Rose is with us today. Let's talk a little bit about what they do, these credit repair con artists. First of all, we know that they con consumers out of millions of dollars every year. Many of them use slick telemarketing campaigns with promises of helping consumers start over again with a good, clean slate. One of the newest tools in our crackdown is the FTC's telemarketing sales rule. It's a comprehensive anti-fraud rule that includes a provision, a very important provision, that prohibits credit repair telemarketers from asking for or taking any money until 6 months after they deliver on the promise. Consumers who understand that one provision of the rule can themselves put credit repair telemarketers out of business. Because the fact of the matter is, credit repair firms can't deliver on the promises to remove accurate, up-to-date information from consumers' credit records. And if they can't deliver, they can't collect, and that means they're out of business. A conservative estimate made by the nation's major credit bureaus is that there are more than 1,100 of these outfits operating in today's economy. Some of them that we investigated, none of them none of them that were investigated by us or the states were operating a legitimate business. None of them. Why is that? Well, the reason is that federal law authorizes and permits a consumer's bill-paying history, your financial history, to be included in a credit record if the information is current and is accurate. Even if it's negative, it can still be included in the credit report, and it can stay there for 7 years, or in the case of bankruptcies, for 10 years. So the credit repair telemarketers who guarantee that they can remove that information that in fact can remain in the credit file are plain out lying. They are lying about what they can do. Consumers who follow the instructions of these scam artists are likely to and do lose all of their money. The 4 cases brought by the FTC today all involve companies that made false promises, as I said, that they could remove negative information from consumers' credit records. But another type of operation, namely the scam artists that suggest to consumers, recommend to consumers that they can create a false or a new credit identity, are even worse. They tell consumers that if they give them a new number, that is, if the consumer gives the telemarketer a new number, they can create a new file for them. The problem with that is it is a crime, a federal crime, for a consumer to provide false information about a Social Security number or an employment number. That's why we've gone after these folks in this cooperative and concerted way. That is, to try, with the help of the states, to put them out of business. Many of the cases we announced are, as I said, enforcing the new telemarketing rule. And I already talked about that provision, so let's talk about a couple of the other provisions. Another feature is that, and one that is very important, is that it boosts, incredibly boosts, the number of cops on the National Telemarketing Fraud Beat by allowing the state's attorneys general to go into federal district court and get an order that applies not just within the state, but applies nationally. As Vicki said earlier, I'm very pleased to have our partner, the very distinguished Attorney General of the State of Tennessee, General Burson, who will discuss the state's aspect of this in just a few minutes. Finally, and you will hear shortly from another speaker from the Newspaper Association of America that joined with us today to create a very effective consumer education program. That is, that ads will be placed in the classified sections of member newspapers, right where consumers might be seeing ads about credit repair firms. The consumer education ads say, no money until they deliver. That is straight from the telemarketing sales rule. And they suggest that consumers write the FTC for a new brochure which will help all consumers know what they can do to protect themselves. It's a free brochure. We have some here today, and all you have to do is let the FTC Public Reference Branch know about it, and you can get a free brochure. We also are encouraging consumers, as we have in the past when attacking these frauds, to call the National Fraud Information Center. Their number is 1-800-876-7060. Doing that can help us law enforcers because they turn that information over to us into our database, and it allows us then to identify other scam artists around the country. So now let's hear from the state's perspective. Again, General Burson, representing the state of Tennessee and our joint partner in this effort.
Thank you and good morning. Consumers beware. Telemarketers offer to clean up your credit record could often be a clever disguise to clean you out financially. That's the message today. And unfortunately, as you're going to hear from Ms. Rose in a few minutes, the people they so effectively prey on are those that are most vulnerable in our country and that can least afford to be victimized by this scam. But it is just that vulnerability that they have honed to a fine art of exploitation. And I think today's joint action by the Federal Trade Commission and 10 states not only sends a message and it will not only serve as an educational vehicle, but will actually stop a good number of these scam artists from operating, and I think will drive a lot more out of business. From the state's perspective, and I think from the FTC's perspective, today is important, and the actions today are important for another reason. They mark the true coming of age of joint state and federal cooperative efforts in fighting the war against the proliferation of telemarketing scam artists. For a number of years, the states and the FTC have worked, and the Justice Department have worked on cooperative efforts to attack this proliferating problem in the nation. But today marks the first time we have had the opportunity to use the new federal telemarketing law, which allows state attorneys general to enforce the national rules established by the Federal Trade Commission on telemarketing in federal court. The problem that the states have had in the past in combating telemarketing is that I could, in Tennessee, stop a fraudulent telemarketer from operating in Tennessee, but that same telemarketer could just go across the border in Kentucky and begin to prey on the people there, or prey on the people in other parts of the nation. Or they could move to Nevada if they were stopped in Kentucky. I don't know how many of you have ever seen the child's game, maybe the adult's game in an arcade, where you keep trying to knock the heads down and you try to get them all down before one could pop up. Well, in telemarketing, what's been happening is we'll knock one down in Tennessee, they'll pop up in Kentucky, and knock him down in Kentucky, and he pops up in Florida. This puts a stop to that practice. The injunctions we'll receive in Tennessee will stop them from operating anywhere in the country. And I think it is the most important tool we have had in fighting the proliferation of telemarketing fraud to date. And I'd like to say that as we work on other models to work with other federal agencies, that I hope they can follow the lead of the FTC, and I think we are seeing the fruit of that effort today, and I would anticipate that we'll have other similar actions. So I'd like to commend the FTC, I'd like to commend the state attorneys general, all of my colleagues who have worked hard to get to this day where we have the power to go into federal court to enforce these rules and to make a significant contribution in our states and nationwide in stopping fraudulent telemarketing practices. Thank you very much for being here, and I'll be available for questions later.
Thank you very much, Charles. Now we'd like to hear from Nicholas Canestraro, Jr., Senior Vice President of Marketing for the Newspaper Association of America. And I can't say how pleased we are to have had your cooperation and that of your member newspapers. So thank you, and we'll receive your comments now.
Thank you very much, Jody. Good morning. The Newspaper Association of America is delighted to have this opportunity to tell you of newspapers' efforts to educate the readers about fraudulent advertising. NAA, as you may know, is a nonprofit corporation serving approximately 1,500 daily newspapers in the United States and Canada. The majority of NAA members are daily newspapers, and that accounts for about 85% of the daily circulation in the United States, reaching, I might add, over 60% of U.S. adults on an average day. Newspaper publishers are very sensitive to the needs of their readers and the community within which they publish. As a result of this sensitivity, publishers routinely implement, to various degrees, screening policies of rejecting material that they think may be harmful or offensive to their readers. They can do this at their own discretion. Newspapers also publish feature stories on a variety of consumer topics to protect the readers from consumer fraud of this kind or any other kind. So when the FTC officials invited us to meet with them last fall to discuss this problem of credit repair fraud, it was not at all unusual for NAA to agree to inform its members about the problem. Our association published information about credit repair fraud in 2 of its major trade publications, As a result, a growing number of NAA member newspapers have decided to publish information in their classified sections, warning newspaper readers about companies that charge fees to repair one's credit record, as has been described, even though the individual can correct his or her record for free. Some of the newspapers who have published the notice so far include the Long Beach, California Press Telegram, the Richmond, Virginia Times Dispatch, the Orlando, Florida Sentinel, the Bellevue, Illinois News Democrat, the Waterloo, Iowa Courier, the Winchester, Kentucky Sun, the Baton Rouge, Louisiana Advocate, the Joplin, Missouri Globe, the Missoula, Montana Missoulian, the Santa Fe, New Mexican, the Toledo, Ohio Blade, the Doylestown, Pennsylvania Intelligencer Record, and the Towanda, Pennsylvania Daily Review. These are just a few of the newspapers that we are aware specifically about running this material, and we know there are many more coming on daily and weekly to publish these notices. We also have some samples of these notices here today. This is an example of what appears, the type of thing that would appear under the credit services category of the classified section, and these are the newspaper. This is the kind of thing these newspapers I mentioned have been running. And later on, I'll be happy to take any questions about other activities newspapers are doing to deal with this issue. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nicholas. Nothing can be more central to the law enforcement effort than the joint consumer education program that we have accompanying the cases that were approved by the Commission and by the states. But perhaps nothing can more vividly describe what it is we're going after today than the story of consumers who have been injured by these scams. So to at least give you one story from one injured consumer, I'd like to introduce again Catherine Ross, who has agreed to visit with us. She's from Charlotte, North Carolina, and we welcome her. Catherine?
Hi. I'm here to start a campaign, I guess, to warn the consumers to scrutinize when they hear these ads. I had a 20-year marriage that ended in divorce. This created financial hardship. That, coupled with medical problems that was even more devastating, finally led to filing bankruptcy. I had no alternative. I worked two full-time jobs and also went to school. During this time, after the filing of bankruptcy, I found it difficult to even qualify for the basic necessity of housing. And one day when I was driving back from work, I heard on the car radio an advertisement for credit repair. Well, the credit repair promised to eradicate any negative information that was on your credit bureau report, even bankruptcy. Well, I thought, being desperate, this was the solution, and it wasn't. All it did was put me in further financial problems, taking away $695, and provided the only service that could have been done by my own doing, by contacting the credit bureau themselves directly. I found that their customer service was lacking. There were phone calls that were unanswered. I corresponded through letters. Again, there was no response. And I found them to be completely bogus in their claims. The only service, as I said before, was something that could have been done by myself, simply by picking up the phone. And the only time that a credit bureau is going to remove anything is if it is false. And that's, something that seemed from their advertisements that everything could be removed, and it just wasn't so. So all they did was help me get further financially behind.
And take your money.
And take my money.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Before we take your questions, and we'll all be available to do so, I want to introduce the people in the Bureau who have been central to the development of this law enforcement effort. Eileen Harrington is the Associate Director for Marketing Practices. Eileen. David Medine, yes, David Medine is the Associate Director for Credit Practices in the Bureau, and Steve Baker is the Director of the Chicago Regional Office of the FTC and was the central coordinator of this widespread investigation and law enforcement effort. So now you know everybody, and we will be delighted to take your questions. Yes. If I can't see you. Okay, thanks.
You heard the recounting of how Ms. Ross heard this on our car radio. It could have been telemarketing, and she thought this was a solution. In a nutshell, at that point, if you could have popped out of the car radio, what would you say to her?
I would have said, Catherine, don't do it. Don't send them any money. They're lying to you. You have rights of your own. You can take steps. You can approach these problems, hopefully correct them. Don't send them any money. General Burson, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, I would say, absolutely do not call them. Let me tell you, these folks are skilled. Once you have taken the bait and made the call, they, I think, and 9 times out of 10, and they don't, all they need is about 1 time out of 10, they're going to out-talk you. And the people who who bite for these thinking, well, I can figure out whether they're legit or not, that is a mistake. They are clever enough, I can tell you, to fool me. They're clever enough to fool you. They're clever enough to fool Miss Rose. This is and don't mistake it, a highly skilled group of scam artists. Once they get you on that telephone, chances are you're going to lose some money. So the first thing I would say is, certainly don't call back or don't call the number they've given you.
Yes, there's a question here. Why don't you stay up here, Charles?
Has there been any attempt to get the credit card companies and the banks involved in an effort to quash down on these guys, because they're often victimized by this as well, and they seem to just write it off?
Oh, that's true. That's true. That's a good point. Steve makes the point that they do participate in the sense that they are funding the National Fraud Information Center. And so that's their way of finding out who has been injured and trying to stop the fraudulent operators as well as we are. So that, at least in part, is a way for them to go about stamping this out.
But do they not profit from this as well?
No.
I don't believe so. I don't believe they profit from credit repair because the only people who profit from this are the con artists. They pocket the money and they're off in a way, probably starting a new one in the next county or in the next state. Yes?
A couple of quick questions. Now, Catherine heard her advertisement on the radio.
Yes.
Would that have been considered telemarketing and subject to this no money until 6 months later? Is that still come under that?
Yes, it would.
Okay,
Yes, it
so
does.
even though they didn't place the call first to her at home, that's still considered telemarketing?
Right. It's one of the ways in which the Commission addressed this particular credit repair scam. It covered that kind of transaction.
Given what you said about the fact that you can't really repair records that are accurate and things like that, are any of these companies legitimate who offer to do credit repairs? Are there any legitimate companies who can help consumers on this?
I should say none we know of. The short answer is no. There are no legitimate credit repair operators in the United States. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, was there any information on your credit report that was inaccurate that they helped remove by making that one little phone call?
Catherine?
Well, there was some information that was removed, but it was anything that I could have done myself. So I was paying this enormous fee, and it was something that I could have done simply by picking up the phone and speaking directly to the credit bureaus.
Was the bankruptcy removed?
No, no.
Just like little things that really didn't matter in the long run or just didn't help you out a lot?
See, had I been thinking, I would have realized the credit bureau can only report the truth. If it's untrue or false in any way, they will remove it. And that's a service that's available to anybody.
How easy do you think that would have been if you had just picked up the phone and tried to contact the credit bureau?
A lot easier than shelling out $695.
Did you try that afterwards, subsequently, at all?
To tell you the truth, no. I work 7 days a week. I try to do my best to be self-reliant and take responsibility for my own problems. So I didn't have the opportunity.
Can I ask you to also respond to that? How easy is it for a consumer to pick up the phone and deal with one of these credit bureaus?
It's relatively easy. The credit bureaus know that it's their obligation to maintain current and accurate information. They are also, they're legitimate operators. They're providing a service to the to creditors throughout the United States and to consumers for that matter. So they provide that service. It isn't hard.
So it's not like, letter after letter after letter sent to them and correspondence taking up all this time that you just throw up your hands and
No,
say.
it isn't. There are also counselors who will help people who are having credit difficulties. That is, who perhaps don't know what a particular charge is for, or don't know how to dispute it or how to rectify it. In fact, some people need some help in figuring out how to manage their resources and manage their ability to use credit and not overextend themselves. That's an important prior service that a lot of people don't know about. Yes?
These cases, the 4 cases, are they brought under the new law?
Yes, they are brought under the new law.
And are they the first brought under the new law?
They are the first under that provision of the new law. We brought some cases when, Steve, a couple of weeks ago, that were internet fraud cases, some of which were also credit repair, that were not brought under the rule because the rule just went into effect the first of the year, and the rule does not cover internet transactions. So we used our other authority to attack those internet credit repair problems.
Are 4 cases, and you estimated that there are 1,100 operators out there. What's the status of what you can do about that?
Well, let's talk about the state cases, because again, the exciting for us provision of the statute was that it allowed the state attorneys general to also bring cases in federal court. So our 4 cases are only our 4 cases. The states have brought 12 additional cases. 15 additional cases in federal court also.
Can you tell us who some of these bad guys are? We haven't heard any names of any companies.
Steve Baker can provide names of these bad guys.
There's one right here in the District of Columbia called the Credit Doctor that's the Marketing Practices Division is taking on. And they have run infomercials, they've run advertising. They're, I believe, on Wisconsin Avenue Northwest, operating across the United States, also advertising to a lot of people in the military service. And again, it's the same claims. They can get truthful, accurate information off your credit report for a hefty price. Truth, and in fact, they can't. So they take a lot of money from a lot of people. A lot of these people, unfortunately, don't complain. We wish they would. We need those complaints. But Credit Doctors here, we're suing an outfit called Giving You Credit out of San Diego that also operates nationally. There's a case out of our Los Angeles regional office. 2 of them, one against an outfit called the Law Center, and another one I'll get back to you on the exact name of. But these folks, the companies we're talking about today are the companies that operate nationally. What we're trying to do is get the big players, trying to knock the head off this system, and then to let the consumers know that they should be cautious about the rest. And I think this is a beginning effort to deal with them jointly, and I think it's going to have a real impact on them.
You haven't closed them down yet. How do they continue to operate if they're that bad?
A lot of cases we have closed them down. What we're doing is getting injunctions in federal district courts around the country that's going to prohibit them from making these claims, and it's going to prohibit them from accepting any money prior to delivering the services that they promise. That's going to shut them down, and then we're going to try to get restitution for the victims.
Right. Suppose somebody walks in off of the street into Credit Doctor. That's not covered by telemarketing. How are you going to shut them down?
The injunctions that we're getting are going to apply to prohibit these misrepresentations, whether they're subject to the rule or not. So the injunctions that we're getting ought to do it. Even if they're not subject to the rule, they are subject to the laws against deception. And we're also charging deceptive advertising in our cases that we're bringing, in addition to the sales rule violations. And the state cases that are going into federal court are bringing challenges, their own state law claims, the state deception claims, into federal court. So they will also be getting an injunction that prohibits the basic deception claims too.
I'm confused on these numbers because
Okay.
you give us 4 in the release, and those are settlements, or one's under seal, one's going to trial. And then you said there are 15 additional state actions.
There's 15 cases total.
But then you reeled off all these suits. Are they in addition to?
The suits that I mentioned are part of this scam today. There's 15 cases total, 4 by the FTC. There's also other states that are involved in it. Most of those state cases are in federal district court. There's a couple of the cases joining in on these efforts that are state cases being filed in state court under state law against people operating in that state.
So the extra ones you just mentioned, like the credit doctor giving you credit, and the third
Those
one.
are the FTC cases.
We have? Okay, I got you. Thank you.
There's a question over here.
It seems like anybody with a phone and a little bit of ingenuity could kind of do this. How can you prevent someone from starting again under a new, with a new name and doing the same thing?
Well, they'll be subject to an order that can be enforced. We are also, as Steve said, we're seeking to get redress for consumers. So to the extent that we will be able to take their assets away from them, give it back to consumers, it may be more difficult for them to start over again. But in addition, if they can't get money, and that's the reason for trying to get this much attention on it, if they can't collect in advance, they really can't do business because they can't deliver on the promise. So that's our primary hope.
Let me respond to 2 things, and one is the prophylactic effect of something like this. Very often, as you said, it's not just in credit repair, but these telemarketing experts can move from scam to scam, and those in what you tend to do, you tend to drive them out of, by actions like this, we drive them out of the credit repair business, both by the actual actions themselves, secondly, by the consumer information. As far as somebody walking into the street to going to the credit doctor, if they think they can stay in business like that, which they won't, then that's fine. That what greases this whole business and what enables it to work is they play the percentages by sending out mass mailings, by advertising. If they get 1 in 10 people to bite, or less than that, they can make a lot of money. You take that away from them, and they're not going to be able to make it financially, and they're going to move on. And so we have to continue to watch where they move, where's going to be the next operation. And you do get some of these operators that will open up multiple business. Out of 1,100 of these telemarketing operations, we may have picked up 10 really with one action. And what we will tend to see in the database that's being developed now with the FTC, National Consumer Leagues, the AGs, is beginning to show these people hopping from company to company and from scam to scam, and that is enabling us to tighten the net on all of them.
And I can't tell you how important it is to have the Newspaper Association taking a very strong interest here, because that will chill the newspaper advertising that is a very effective device for getting consumers involved in these scams. Lisa?
Let me just ask along those lines, if you say there are none of these companies are legitimate, why aren't newspapers not running ads from them just refusing to run ads from them at all, as well as radio stations and things like that? I mean, if these companies aren't legitimate, shouldn't these ads just not even be appearing at all?
Well, we are hoping that the increased attention on these scams and the law enforcement effort will mean that all media will be paying closer attention to the kinds of ads that are running. We know the newspaper people are. We hope the radio people will as well, because it is only by concerted effort in all these areas that we can affect stamping these con artists out of business.
What I'm wondering from the Newspaper Association, are these papers running ads from these outfits at the same time they're running these warnings?
Well, it's a question of knowing about this, and our role as the Trade Association for the Newspaper Industry is to try to get as much information out. That's why we welcome this opportunity, because we hope that publishers around the country, there are 1,500 that we represent, will hear this and in fact exercise their discretion in the first line of defense, which is to not run any of this advertising that is suspected to be fraudulent. The second line of defense is, of course, to keep publishing this kind of thing, to warn people about other media opportunities that they may be reached by. So we're working as hard as we can, and we just need to help get the word out.
Will Catherine get her money back? Will she get her money back?
We hope so. We hope so. We would love to get Catherine's money back.
Is the company that victimized her among the group that you've that either you or state authorities have sought an injunction for?
Yes, it is.
What was the name of that company? The company I dealt with?
Yes.
First Consumer Alliance. They're based in California. I'm sorry. It was First Consumer Alliance, and they're based in California. I'd also like to comment in defense of the newspapers. This particular company reiterated many times how they're perfectly legal. So I'm certain that is why the ads were being run. They said time and time again they were perfectly legal. So.
Yes.
Jody, can you give us any idea of how much money these 1,100 companies take in every year?
Millions. I don't know if we can put a figure on it or not, but it really is. It has been so widespread and such a national scam that we really believe that there are millions of dollars have been lost annually to these folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Thank you, Nicholas, too. And you too, Catherine. You were great. Well, you couldn't tell. You couldn't tell. Just fine.
Hi, I'm with ABC Radio. I was wondering if you know the name of the radio station.
Victims of fraudulent credit repair services should contact the National Fraud Information Center or the Federal Trade Commission. On tomorrow's Washington Journal, our newspaper round